All right, slide 21, belief, a thought you think is true. This is goes back to our first slide. What is belief? It's a thought that you think is true, remember? So in the diagram, you have a picture of a guy, a diagram of his head with computations going on in his brain. And there are, of course, he has eyes and ears and all that. And in the middle there's a telescope and a microscope and a computer. Those are extensions of his sense organs, right? Because you can only see so much. And the computer, like Google Earth and things like that, are on the computer that show you parts of the world. Now, outside reality is on the far left there, the globe and planes and tigers and things like that that exist outside of him. And then there's a picture of a thought bubble behind his head, which is kind of a picture of what's going on in his mind, what he thinks he sees outside his world, outside of his senses, right? Which is really a computation of all that information coming in, projected onto the object, like in the other diagram with the cat. So a belief is a thought that you think is true. All right. We will now continue to the next slide, slide 22, which says a thought you think is true, right? That's what a belief is. It's a thought. What's a thought? It's something like a picture in the mind, or a model in the mind, or a representation in the mind, an image in the mind of the world outside the mind, right? And that's the first bullet. A thought. What's a thought? It's some kind of model or picture or representation in the mind. Next bullet. That you think is true. You think it reflects the reality outside of your mind. Third bullet. Truth. What does true mean? It's some kind of a relationship between the thought in your mind and the reality outside of your mind. So if in your mind you have a picture that the cat is on the mat, it's true if there's a cat outside of your mind and a mat outside of your mind and the cat is on the mat. Then the thought is true, right? What's that relationship? It's a correspondence between the thought in your mind and the objects outside of your mind. It's some kind of matching relationship. The thought matches reality, or it mirrors it. It depicts reality the way a photograph depicts the picture that it's a picture of, or it represents it, right? Your senses present it to your mind, and your mind represents a picture of what it's being presented to the mind, right? Any of those works, right? So true belief is a belief which is a thought that you have that you think is true, and it is true, right? So a true belief depicts reality the way it is, correctly, right? Let's keep going on to the third slide, which shows a picture of a head with a weather vane on top of it, right? So a weather vane is one of those things on top of a house that moves when the wind moves, and it has, it shows you which direction the wind is blowing in, north, south, east, or west, right? And so is your mental weather vane functioning? Your belief process, is your belief process detecting the wind of reality, the wind of evidence, of data, of information coming in, right? So I'm making an analogy between the mind, which is a belief-forming process, which detects information from the world and moves in the direction of it, pointing to the reality, the way that a weather vane detects the wind and moves in the direction that the wind is flowing, right? The weather vane depicts the direction of the wind, and the belief-forming process, if it's working, should detect reality or truth and point in the direction of it, right? So let's go on one more slide where I say weather vane analogy, and I show a weather vane, or even a compass, same thing. A compass is working if it shows you where the North Pole is, right? So what is a weather vane for, or a compass? To indicate the direction of the wind or where magnetic north is. When it's functioning, it points to reality, to the direction of the wind or the North Pole. When it's malfunctioning, it doesn't. It points to the last place that it when it was working, right, where the wind was blowing or where the North Pole is. What might cause it to malfunction? It could be broken, it could be frozen, it could be rusted, it could be damaged in some way, right? What is belief for? Belief is for, in the way that a weather vane is for showing where the wind is, or a compass is for, what's it for? To show where the North Pole is. Beliefs are for showing you where reality is, right? So when it's functioning, it shows you reality. When it's malfunctioning, it's pointing to the last reality that you had access to, if at all, right? And what causes it to malfunction? Similar to a weather vane. If your belief vane, so to speak, or your reality detector, your truth vane is not functioning, that would be kind of like putting a dome over a weather vane that blocks the wind from touching the weather vane, or when the weather vane is rusted or frozen, it can't move. Similarly, if your mind is frozen or stuck, attached to a certain model, it doesn't want to let go of that model, it's no longer getting in new information, it won't move, it's not syncing with reality, it's malfunctioning, right? It's stuck, it's not working. All right, we'll pause here and we'll move on.